Borag Thung athletes, and welcome to the Deep Dive, the brand new show from the 2000 AD Thrillcast, upon which I am joined by host Steve Morris. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing great. And how are you?
Good, excellent. I'm right, thank you. It's wonderful to be able to launch this second of the three shows that the Thrillcast has evolved into. Obviously, there's myself and Chloe Maville, who do In Orbit every Wednesday. But this is the new monthly show where, tell us a little bit about what the deep dive will entail, because I guess the kind of purpose is in the name, really, isn't it?
Exactly right. Yes. I came to 2000 AD only recently, and as a result, I've been reading a lot of the back catalogue and learning all the characters the first time, finding out a lot of the classic stories and serials. And by doing that, I've developed a whole new love for 2000 AD. That there's always forgotten favourites and cult classics that you may not touch on the first go, but on the second go around, you look at them and you learn so much. There's so much interesting material out there. So what I'm trying to do is bring that to comics critics, academics, thinkers, podcasters, and basically sit them down with a new comic and go, right, well, look at this. This is a world over here. Try this. See what you think of it. Is it what you want it to be? Is it what you thought it would be? How is 2000 AD surprising to you, or how is it how is it affecting the way that you read future comics? Basically, what can the 2000 AD archive bring to readers in the modern day?
I mean, that's an embarrassment of riches, really, isn't it? we're coming up to 50 years of 2000 AD, and I mean, there's not just that, of course. There's also, I mean, more than 120 years of comics history in the Rebellion archive, which the Treasury of British Comics is exploring. So I guess it's, how are people reacting to this? Because I've been a fan since I was a kid, so a lot of this stuff is not new to me. It's part of my cultural psychological makeup, if you will. But this is bringing people fresh, and it kind of almost explaining what makes 2000 AD. Why does 2000 AD have this reputation as a house of ideas?
2000 AD has built American comics over the last 30, 40 years. All the creators have come across to America, and they've made the iconic comics that they've read over at Marvel, DC, Image, and so on. But do people then go back and see where they started? So what's been really interesting is taking people back and going, here's some of your favorite writers and artists. So here's some classic Alan Davis. You've read Alan Davis comics for years and years and you've loved it, but let's go right back to when he was first starting, or let's look back at some of the stuff he's doing when he had less of a leash on him, you could argue, when he's doing DR and Quinch and Harry 20, if I got that right. It's a learning experience for me as well as for the others. But seeing people look back at the comics that they loved and then going, well, actually, there's an origin for this. This has all come from somewhere. Seeing the characters they love, the ideas that they've been following for years, all in a lot of cases stemmed from 2000 AD, came from us. So seeing them react to that has been really interesting, I think, as an ongoing project for us. And there's a lot of really good writers and artists who are getting a bit of their old work spotlighted again, which is nice to see.
Wonderful. And of course, if you are listening or watching the deep dive, then you can read along by going along to the 2000 AD app, where collections of the strips that we're going to be talking about are available to buy and download. And I do recommend doing that. So one of the joys of previous deep dives that you've done on the old Thrillcast was rereading this stuff myself and then hearing what you and your guest were talking about. It's almost seeing it through fresh eyes, which is a wonderful process. So for your first deep dive, of this new era. We're actually going with a bit of a modern classic, aren't we? Tell us what strip has been chosen.
So the first one is going to be The Out, which is by Dan Abnett. It's by Mark Harrison. This is the story of Cyd, who is a photojournalist who leaves Earth for undisclosed personal reasons to go out into the galaxy and take photos across the universe. The paychecks keep coming, so she keeps going further and further out into the farthest depths of the galaxy. Then the paychecks stop, and she thinks, I don't know how to get home. I don't know where I am. Everyone here is an alien. There are no humans 4 light years away from me. What do I do now? It is one of the comics that I read it even before I came to join 2000 AD. It was one of the comics that I was collecting and reading myself. So it was really nice to reread it again, the first two stories, and also to bring it to this month's guest.
Well, a real journey of self-discovery. So who are you going to be discussing the Out with?
So this is Sara Century is going to be joining me. Sara is I've known her for years now as a comics critic and podcaster. She's perhaps best known for being one of the co-hosts on Bitches on Comics, which is a brilliant podcast which
Great
focuses
show.
comics. Yeah. She's also written for Sci-Fi Wire, CBR, Comics Alliance. Basically, every outlet you can think of, she has written something for. She is the most prolific person I think I know. She's also a documentarian right now, I believe. So she's moving into video as well. So you'll be seeing a lot of Sara over the next few years, I'm sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what she and you have to say about the Out. Like I said, it's a modern classic. The first collection of which is available on the 2000 AD app, and also in a rather fetching paperback, which you can get from all good comic book stores and the 2000 AD web shop at shop.2000ad.com. So I'm going to back off now and let you get on with talking to Sara Century about Dan Abnett and Mark Harrison's The Out.
Borag Fung Outlets. This is Steve. I'm back on the Thrillcast for another one of our 2000 AD deep dives, where we look into the heart of the archive and pick out comics from across 2000 AD's history, from the very first few stories right through to the current thrills that are gracing the galaxy's greatest comic. Each edition of the deep dives, I'm joined by a different writer, critic, journalist, or podcaster. And this time around, I'm joined by someone who is all of those things. Sara Century. Sara, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Yay! I am so hype. I am thrilled to be here.
Suitably thrill powered for today's episode. And you've written for basically every website that I can think of. But you're also a podcaster, podcasting for Bitches on Comics, which has run for, is it almost 300 episodes now, or is it much more than that?
Oh, well, we've been going since I think 2019, and I think our anniversary is maybe in September, so that's coming up. But it has been going for a long old time. And I also lose the episodes. The hosts also kind of change around, so I'm not even on every episode. Like we kind of jump in and out. What I've been doing more recently has been Best Issue Ever, which is a podcast that's kind of weekly and goes up Tuesdays ? But I've been really enjoying doing that because I'm just talking to people about their favorite comics. So I felt like kind of jumping in and out of Bitches on Comics and then kind of focusing on Best Issue Ever has been really fun for me. But Best Issue Ever or Bitches on Comics is like at this point it's greater than us all. Like it's greater than the sum of its parts, and it's gonna keep going. So that's been really kind of just a wild thing because you never know what you're going to make that's just going to keep going. And then you go, oh, well, this now that we're like 5 years in, I guess this is one of the things that stuck.
We're here now and we're sticking around. It's an amazing podcast. I recommend people listen to it. And Best Issue Ever as well. I mean, you've had some great guests on there. You had Pulitzer Prize winners, and you had writers and artists and all kinds of
And
people.
just friends. Yeah, there's like a really good mix of people because my focus is talking to people who I think are interesting and are going to be in the vibe of the conversation. So sometimes I'm like, wow, a lot of people have talked about this X-Men issue, but no one who was like 22 and from, like you kind of start to be like, let's try to get some different opinions. And
Mm.
fortunately, it's nice to be someone who knows a lot of different people, like just across the board. So it's like this weird culmination where I feel like a lot of my love for comics, but then also my love for talking to people about the things that they love, which is, one of the great delights, I think, of being a comics fan. Because we were talking before the call started about how we were like quarter bins, like little goblins whenever we were getting into comics. So actually talking to people and being like, oh, you read that too? And you thought it was great too? That's got to be one of my favorite
Mm.
experiences.
It's one of the great joys of being a comics fan is the opposite of gatekeeping. It's kicking the gate open and going, "Hey, everyone, come see this cool thing I just found. It cost me 15p. It was
Yeah.
basically ripped in half, but it's got this really cool stuff in it, and it's
Yeah.
really fun to read."
And you don't have to know about everything about the comic, even if it's run 1,000 issues or,
Mm.
it's Batman or whatever, or it's X-Men or something that's part of this much larger continuity. Just those joyous moments of dipping in on a single issue and being like, this is wild, what's happening? But it's fun and I love it. And so that's also just been wonderful, just having people share my favorites with me, but then also people will bring stuff that I've never read before. And so it's been really nice to be like, this rules. Like nobody has sent me anything that I even frowned at while I was reading. It's all just been bangers the whole time. So what's better than that? Just talking about bangers.
Thank you for using the word bangers. This is a British podcast. I appreciate that. Um, that's a really great segue into the comic that we're going to talk about today, which is The Out by Dan Abnett, Mark Harrison, and Annie Parkhouse. The Out, I've got my facts here, debuted in 2000 AD in 2020 in Prog 2187. It's run for 3 stories so far, with the 4th one coming out later this year. And for this, we've read the first 2 stories, which are collected in a lovely trade paperback, which I can show for the people watching on YouTube, but it will be completely blurred out. But it is there,
Mm.
I promise.
Good
Um,
cover though. Just to, like look this up. It's good.
yeah, and I think that's the thing that catches people most is when you look at it, it is so unlike anything else that you may have seen in comics. I mean, is it a comic that you'd heard of before we talked about it for the podcast?
No, you brought this to me and I was so happy you did. I love this. I thought it was so, so good. I think you nailed it. Like there was something
Hmm.
of, it was like, oh, which one would Sarah like? And it was this exactly. This was the one.
Yeah.
This is like and not to say that there, I mean, I love 2000 AD. It's a great magazine and has been since literally its inception.
Hmm.
But this was one where I was like, oh, yes,
This fits.
definitely.
Yeah. Was there talk about your history a little bit with 2000 AD if we can. Obviously you're in America. What
Yeah.
which stories have you read? Which ones, have your attention? Have you had a chance to read much 2000 AD so far?
Yeah, the thing that I've always loved about 2000 AD is like even reading through this comic and the way you can tell it's clipped into these very short
Hmm.
vignettes. There's something so wonderful about that because I've been a fan of anthologies my entire life. It's one of my very favorite things. And the fun thing about anthologies is that it doesn't like the plot doesn't always have to stick with you, but you can remember these moments because they're such short stories, right?
Mm.
This was fun just reading the entire thing in sequence, but I love an anthology because of that. So then you get all of this like weird imagery that's kind of disconnected in your head. As you, when you go back through it, you'll be like, right, I remember this. But I
Mhm.
gotta say, there's a lot of things that I've really loved. I love the Wagner stuff. Like we were talking about that a little bit before, because I was, as an American, right? Like it wasn't around. Like you couldn't
Mm.
find 2000 AD where it was certainly not where I was at. I was in a rural area in the Midwest where they don't have they don't have much going on there.
Sure.
But I definitely couldn't find 2000 AD. But so whenever I got into reading it, it was in collections for the most part. So I didn't get that experience of going vignette,
Week to
vignette,
week,
vignette.
yeah.
Yeah, which I love. And so lately I've been reading a lot of 2000 AD, and it's been more like that in that anthology format that I really love to read. So
Mm.
yeah, I gotta say I love Judge Dredd. I love it whenever Judge Death comes in. I love that story. It's so iconic. I just like so good.
Yeah.
And so as a horror fan, like it's just a horror comic at that point. Like it's just terrifying. And of course I love Judge Hershey. Like there's been a lot of stuff going on with that character lately.
A few
But
things happened to her, yeah.
but yeah, no, I've always everything I read, and then of course, whenever once again, as an American, and as we were talking before, I got on the call, it's like that Vertigo era is whenever you read Vertigo. I was reading Vertigo way too young, probably, but as like a
Mhm.
12,
Same.
13-year old, and yeah, of course, in the 90s, it was allowed. And yeah, just reading those old Vertigo comics and then later picking up some of like those creators working on 2000 AD, and you just go, oh my God, like this is the birth of it. Like this is kind of
Mm.
where Vertigo springs out kind of in a weird way. It's
Yeah.
removed by all of this time and ocean, like everything. But it is still so inspired, I think, by 2000 AD.
It's so interesting as well because this is a comic written by Dan Abnett, and
Yeah,
Dan Abnett had this great period at well, he worked for DC, but also at Marvel, where he basically helped revitalize their entire cosmic side of Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy and Annihilation, all those stories, and
totally.
he's a really interesting part of comics history, I think, because he's done these major comics for America, and then he's kind of come back to the UK, where he's got this mini library of like classic runs that he's done for 2000 AD. He's also writing new novels for Warhammer every year or so. He's
Right.
incredibly busy, but um, a lot of creators they told their big stories in Britain, then went to America, and their career moved forward in America. Dan Abnett's one who went to America, then came back. It's not a thing we see so often,
Right.
and I really think that what we see is Dan Abnett almost like I don't want to say like off the leash, but like revitalized almost in a
Totally.
story like The Out.
I
With
was gonna say exactly. You said I don't want to say unleash, and I was like literally like in my head at the same time going, I don't want to say unchained, but
mm,
and it's like that's kind of how it feels though, is that you get to see him doing whatever he wants to do, it feels like, as far
yeah,
as he has to obviously break it up into the page number. The always editorial, he has to go chapter to chapter,
mhm,
and it's a story that has to go somewhere. But at the same time, you just see a lot of those ideas that were kind of floating around in Cosmic Marvel and Cosmic DC, and they are just, it's here, they're just fun. They don't have to really be this
mm,
like galaxy shattering event every other page or something like that. So it is almost like a story where it's funny. He just gets to be funny and kind of explore things. And I don't know, I really haven't read anything that specifically like this comic. I thought that it was not just the art, which gives it just such a incredible sci-fi, like just every other
mm,
story, they're in a totally different place and it's just gorgeous. But I just haven't really seen something like this. And I read in an interview with him, he was talking to Multiversity, and he was talking about how they had a mutual love of those old sci-fi novel covers from like the 70s, where it's the cover didn't necessarily have anything to do with the story. And then they were saying, oh, well, each little chapter has a cover like that. So just base it, like we'll just
mm.
view it like that. And to me, I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like that context really helped me understand this story.
It's like you say, 2000 AD can be a series, well, any anthology can be a series of vignettes, and this is a comic which is designed to be all vignettes, which build up to unexpected narratives. And just to kind of explain what the comic is a little bit, I mean, this is the story of Cyd, who is a photojournalist who starts off on Earth and decides to leave and go, on behalf of her publisher, go out into the wilds of space. She keeps taking photos of all the different alien planets that she sees, all the different cultures she meets, and then she sends the photos back to them over the Wi-Fi, I suppose. And they keep sending her checks. So she cashes the checks. She keeps going further and further, exploring more and more of space. Then suddenly she stops getting paid, and she has to wonder, what have I done? What's happening? Also, I don't know how to get home. What do I do next? So we talk about the out is outer space. It is the far reaches of the world. And I mean, as it starts out, I mean, what do you make of Cyd as we first start the series? She's immediately very much herself, which is really interesting, I think, for a character like this.
Yeah, I loved that they chose that she was a photographer. I thought that that was a really good idea because if she were a journalist, the whole approach would be different. She would be trying to get to a truth and trying to
Mm.
organize her thoughts in this very specific way. And as a photographer, she's really trying to catch the moment. And so that means that she's kind of this wild card who's just sort of wandering in a weird way, just kind of, oh, well, I'll go over there because that's something I will take pictures of, and taking pictures, and then having this inner monologue that gets to be a lot more like disorganized, I guess, like this kind of the way that she talks, the way that she experiences things is she just kind of is like, oh, right. So I'll go over there or something like that. It's not like a journalist who would be like, all right, and I'm following this person or something like that. So I loved it gives it like not to say that photographers are disorganized, they're like the most organized people I've met in my entire life, but the idea of like not trying to assign a narrative, I guess, like while she's going along is really helpful to a story like this because she just gets to experience people like the alien people that she comes into contact with. She gets to experience them kind of on their own terms, it feels like. And I really loved that.
It really feels like that experience of whenever you go, I don't know if you've traveled around, but if you go to another country or you backpack or hitchhike and you don't really know the full language, you don't really know, the culture or the ideas of their society, and you kind of wing it as you go along. And she's doing that consistently. And I suppose the great thing about her character for me is how successful she is at doing that. She goes to these other planets where people have never heard of humans before, never seen a human before, and she's just able to kind of like get on their side. And she tells jokes which makes them laugh. She says things which they find charming. She's not a uh, she's not an unlikable character. She's basically just willing to meet them on their own terms, and they appreciate it. It's a very peaceful view of traveling, of like going to these different sites, different cultures, and seeing what they've got to offer. Because she's always doing it in a fair way. She's never coming into it with a agenda or a plan. She's just like, let's just see what's happening, and let's just wander around and see who's nice and try the food and try the drink and see if it's edible or poisonous or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I love that about her. And it gives the story just such a unique flavor, I guess. The way that it goes is there are important things that happen and there's important things that you need to know as we go along, but a lot of it really is her kind of drifting from place to place. There's like bonkers things that are happening to her, like she dies and then they regenerate her body and they're like, yeah, it just took like 50 years or whatever to do that. And she's like, wait, what? I was dead for 50 years? Like, there's a lot of really jarring stuff, even going to a concert at one point, and it's just this like ultra sensory experience. And Just a lot of stuff like that. So the whole time you are getting these really bonkers sci-fi plots so that keeps it fun the whole
Mhm.
time because you just get to play little mind exercises the whole time you're reading it. But then you're seeing this character who is super unlike a lot of 2000 AD protagonists. Like this is a character that is there's no particular drive to her. Even she wants to find her lost daughter, but even that is a very loose thing where she's like, I might find her. I don't know. I'll
Yeah,
try, I
she
guess.
doesn't believe herself when she says that. You know, she goes out. Other characters, you know, Dread, Strontium Dog, Road Trooper, they've got their mission, they've got their purpose. They believe they're going
Right.
to achieve it, or they're going to try and achieve it. And she's going, well, I'm just going to keep traveling, and maybe it'll help, or maybe it won't. But at least I'm doing something, I guess. And oh, look, interesting thing over there. Go do that instead.
Oh yeah. And then it's like it's so funny. The whole book is hilarious. I was cracking up like the whole time I was reading it. Her backpack gains sentience and is like one of the best characters in the book. It's hilarious. And then you also have these moments that are kind of devastating. Like she's talking when she talks to the therapist, and the therapist is again one of the funniest characters in the book and just keeps being like, stop lying, what's your problem, basically. Like, and the way that that conversation goes is essentially whenever they brought her back to life, they had removed her scar from her daughter having well, she had a C-section whenever she was delivering her daughter.
Mm,
And it's the idea of them taking something that reminded her of something. And that just touched on something I think that's so deep, how we do kind of keep our pains because they comfort us, I guess. And
mm,
only more so whenever you feel alone in the galaxy, right? You know, metaphorically or literally in Cyd's case.
mm,
But I found that to be really beautiful and just kind of gorgeous. And then later, of course, she meets like this concept of her daughter, or perhaps actually her daughter. It's kind of it's kind of
very
loosey
vague.
goosey.
Yeah.
But the idea too that instead of being so happy that she sees her, she's like, I'm staying here forever. Like I'm never leaving you again.
Mm,
And I find that too to be so interesting of her character because she could be happy for it, but it's like that desire to hold on to something even when it's hurting us, right? Is
mm.
so human. And it's out of nowhere in the story because you're just cracking up and being like, what did she get herself into now? And then you're just like, oh no, I'm kind of crying a little bit. Like, this is
And
good.
it's so like it's such a great portrait of life as a whole because as you say, like she's having a silly adventure where something goes wrong, or she's she her backpack gets stolen, so she lets herself get kidnapped and carried along a horrific like journey. But then she will just suddenly drop into something which has immense emotional depth to it, and you go, oh, she's a real person, like she's fully realized, she's got her own things going on, there's importance in her life. And it's because the series is so rambling in the way it's portraying itself, and that she's just wandering from planet to planet. When these things happen, they happen so quickly and out of the blue, and suddenly you're in a completely different series. He's really good. Well, both Mark and Dan are so good at whiplashing for the reader. So she will go into these silly stories, then something that's really emotionally draining, then off into something that's really exciting or scary horror. There's a segment which is like a full war comic where she's basically traveling along with a bunch of different people, witnessing the aftermath of a war, and you never really know what's going to come next. It's that's the thing I think is really exciting for me, is not knowing where the series is going ultimately, or what's going to happen next. There's always, she always goes further into the out. There's always something else out there to experience. It could be anything.
Yeah, I love it. And she's like the perfect protagonist for that. Just like the drifting nature, I think, of her life. I just love to watch it. And just to see her, I love the part where human becomes a verb and it's like it means to fuck off
Mm.
basically and just to wander off where you're not allowed.
Yeah,
She's like, okay, so turning us into sling maybe has not been my finest moment. But then there's like that really beautiful scene where she just sees this random human dude and they're both like touching each other's faces because they haven't seen another person in
In
so
like a
long. And
decade, yeah.
they're like, hey, and like they just like don't
Mm,
know each other whatsoever. And then he's just like, you should go actually, but I would love to see you again, but you should go. And even that character kind of comes back up and mentioned later, but it's just like that desire for connection with other humans, I guess, is
mm,
such a fascinating thing to see too, because I think a lot of stories that are set in these kind of fantastic realms can kind of forget that part of us or something. It's just like, oh, here's this human in space and interacting with all these different creatures, but then
mm,
it's like, I think that there is that desire just to see each other and to be near each other that humans always have. I didn't really expect to think about that when I opened this
hmm.
comic. And then I was just like, man, this is good. This is good. If somebody asked me what my favorite Dan Abnett work was now, I think it would have to be maybe this has to be at like the top
Has
because
been it.
it's everything. It's funny, it's sad, it's just bonkers, like off the rails sci-fi adventures. So I loved it.
I really like sci-fi that is just firing off ideas all the time, and sometimes they may not work, sometimes they may be a bit strange, but just constantly firing out new ideas. So it always replaces the old ones with something new. I mean, the most powerful part for me, I think, in the story comes right near the start where she meets that human. You know, just by chance, she meets another human for the first time in maybe 10 years, and then they get split up, and she goes, "Oh, and I never see him again." In the narration, she goes, "I will never see this man ever again. That's just a fact." And you think, oh, we're really cut off right now. Like this is
Right.
really like we are so in the unknown. And yeah, as the story goes on, she goes on to then have a sort of once she loses the scar, she kind of then goes on a mission to find more human connections, almost like you know help make up for the fact that she's lost her connection to her daughter. But at that very point at the start, you think we are now in the complete alien now. We have no idea what's going to come next.
That idea of like, oh, I actually don't know where Earth even is because Earth is like a backwater small town to
Mm,
everybody in the universe. They're like, we're in New York City. We don't know where that's at. So you have basically, and so I loved that too, just this idea that not only is there, she's disconnected from other humans, but she's disconnected from Earth. Like she has no idea where it's at. Her publisher doesn't seem to actually respond to her other than to drop money in if like she does well, I guess.
yeah,
And she doesn't even really know what that's about. Like she's just like, I get money from like Nat Geo. It's basically Nat Geo pretty
sure.
much. And so she just this idea too that like there's kind of this like system that she's putting her work into and it just kind of sometimes returns money. So that adds precariousness to her situation
Mm,
and a lack of connection because once again she's like I'm not totally sure that the Earth is still there. Like it could have gotten because as you said, there's a war going on the entire time. And
yeah.
it's destroying things, in her path and people die. This is a lot going on for like one book. And
Mm,
that's what I love about it. I think that that's great because I did feel like I'm in a few different sci-fi novels all at the same time. So
yeah.
I think that that was great.
And we have to mention Mark Harrison, whose art on this is stunning to me. He's done a lot of
Yeah,
different sort of weird, wild comics throughout his time. He's done things for Durham Red, who I think you'd quite like, as a mutant vampire bounty hunter lady. Um,
that's me. That's what
Yes,
I
kind of
like.
your sort of thing. Um, he did things for what do you call it, a Desolation Station. I think he did some stuff with the VCs. He's done a lot of outer space cosmic weird stuff. And from what I've read, this was his first chance to really co-create a series, which he really wanted to do. And the process he's got with Dan Abner, I believe, is that he starts creating a world and then he talks to Dan and says, I've got this kind of world in mind. And Dan says, right, well, let me think of a story to set there. It's done that way, which is not, that's not normally how it works in these sort of comics.
That's
It's
not how
normally
it works.
writer says do this, artist, creates their own version of that, and it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Um, and we keep going to this idea of like this being a series of vignettes, but With Cyd being a photographer, it basically means that Mark Harrison can do a splash page every 10 or so pages of this gorgeous vista, this amazing horizon, or this weird like robotic thing, or whatever it may be. Um, and every time it's so unique and alien, so distant looking. It really creates this series of striking images that just reinforce how out Cyd has gone, you know.
Oh yeah, and that was it too. This artist is so incredible. But that's part of why I say like I've never read anything like this. It's the art in no small part is like that. You look at it and you're just like, what is happening? Is just so much color and such like well used color is happening in these pages, and then also the design of everything, which can take influences from literally anywhere in sci-fi history. It feels like this is just like the love of the genre is so front of everybody's mind in this, and that's something that makes it such a delight to read as somebody, of course, who loves sci-fi. But I'm such a fan of watching the way, first of all, the character design of Cyd. It's great. Like she's like, I would say what, 40, maybe like in her late 30s or
Hmm.
something. Love that. I don't know. This is nice to see somebody who's like, or maybe that's just how I read it. But I felt like she's not a kid, right? So she's
Yeah,
like kind
she's
of,
had a
she's an
life.
adult woman for sure. Yeah. And she just like she's pretty, she's not super hot, and then has like she's wearing like the same clothes she was wearing probably when she was like 19, and she's wearing like Daisy Dukes and like a cutoff shirt basically, and she's just backpacking around like you would see a random American backpacking around. And it's just, to me, that I loved that character design even. So every part of this book just really works with each other, like the alien species, what is it, the
Oh, the
military thing, what are they called, the tanker,
Cancelian, is it? Or something like that.
something.
I'm just pulling over my copy. Let me see if
Yeah,
I
I
can
know, I
spell
have a note and I'm like, where is that,
it.
tankinar.
Tankinar. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Tankinar, the character design of those is rad. Like they look terrifying. And then
Mm,
when you find out that they're kind of assimilating living beings into them, that's so
yeah.
cool. But that's it, is like I feel like, and that to me, I'm like, wow, that's like kind of Star Trek-ish. And then this over here is like a 70s novel. Like the way that it all just kind of seems to be this mass of influences that still manages to be so new to me.
Mm,
I thought that this was just, it was a masterpiece kind of. Like honestly, like the work that they put into it, you can tell they're having so much fun too.
mm. It is, I think, one of the most popular stories that runs in 2008 at the moment. Probably alongside lots of Dan Abnett's other comics. I mean, there's Lawless and Brink, and he's got, as I say, he's got an archive right now of he's
Right.
creating this incredible collection of stories like Feral and Foe. I really enjoy, which is a sort of swords and sorcery fantasies D&D takeoff. You know,
I haven't read that one yet. Now I'm gonna have to jump into that one.
there you go. It's amazing that he's managed to, he's had such a long career. He's written so many stories for so many different media, and he is still, even now he is riding like he's having the ride of his life. Like he is on such a roll, you know.
Yeah, he's firing on all cylinders right now. Like, and that, I'm not, I think like a lot of writers do continue to do that in their late careers, but also when it happens, it is truly something to behold. Like, whenever you're seeing someone kind of like, oh, we have this like 20, 30, 40, 50
Mm,
year history, and you're like, this book that just came out is so good, and like some of your best work. I
mm.
love that. Like that being able to watch a creator grow over their career is one of my favorite things to do. So Dan Abnett has given me a lot to work with on that front.
There's going to be a lot more Dan Abnett in your future. It
Ah,
sounds
good,
like,
good.
yeah, sounds good. Um, so we've probably come to our time, I think. But thank you so much for coming on to talk about the outs. Where else can people find you and hear more of your thoughts?
Yes, I actually have been doing a lot of horror writing over the last few years, so I have appeared in a lot of different anthologies. I don't know how clear my 2000 AD influence is, but I
Mm,
definitely know that it's there. I
it's
definitely
showing, right?
I bring a little bit of it's like just that the early embrace of those like hyper violent stories that still to me have a message.
Mm,
They're still saying something. But also I can only imagine, but there is a bunch of stuff that I've been in. I most recently was in a anthology that is a sword and sorcery anthology that is called Profane Altars. It is available through Weird Punk Books. If you are in the UK, I am not sure what delivery of physical copies looks like, but I do know that you can get it as a ebook or anything like that, literally anywhere.
mm.
And that has a lot of other creators in it, and it was so fun. It's like my favorite. I love sword and sorcery. And so it was incredible to work on a sword and sorcery character. It was my first sword lesbian, and I hope that there are more
There are
sword
many more
lesbians
to
in my
come.
future. Yes, I hope so. So there's that, and you can also pick up. I have a short story anthology called "A Small Light and Other Stories," not to be confused with the Nat Geo series that came out after my book was released.
Hmm.
But but yeah, pick that up, I guess. If you are a horror fan, then I have got some stuff for you. Otherwise, listen to Best Issue Ever, listen to Bitches on Comics. We do a lot of interviews on both of those, and yeah, we could always use more listeners. So
Oh, amazing. You're a fantastic podcaster. It's your best issue ever. I've been listening to. I really enjoyed it.
thanks.
Bitch on Comics I've been listening to for forever, and it's introduced me to
Yeah.
so many new people I've not heard of before, and give me like new rabbit holes to wander down, which is always exciting. Thank you so much for coming on to the onto the Philcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for clocking exactly what comic I wanted to talk about without me even knowing. So I really appreciate it. And it was lovely to chat with you. You're a lovely host. Thank you so much.
I'll take that. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yes.
Steve, what an absolutely fantastic discussion. I really, really enjoyed that. Just some very great insights into that shit. How did you find talking to Sarah about the out?
Oh, it's brilliant. She always comes to me with things that I don't expect, which is the most amazing thing. You can look at a comment like The House and think, I kind of know where this conversation is going to go, and then Sarah always takes it into thoroughly unexpected new directions. And it again, like you say, it's nice to have these modern eyes on stories because they pick up things that you might not have picked up yourself. I've read The Out 2 or 3 times, and even still, talking to Sarah, there was new stuff to come out of it. So yeah, really, really great to have the chat with her, and great to bring the deep dive back with her as the as first guest of the new era.
Fantastic, fantastic. So you're going to be returning in a month's time with another deep dive, and I was about to call it another modern classic, but of course, this character has been around for, I mean,
35 years.
5 years. So not quite so modern. And I feel very old all of a sudden. What's the character next time going to be, and who will you be talking to about it?
Another amazing guest. I'm going to be joined by Dr. Anna Peppard, and she's going to be talking about Devlin War, Swimming in Blood with me.
Fantastic. I mean, if you're going to pick one, then that that is one to quite literally get your teeth into. So that episode will be on, he said, consulting his diary, the 8th of March, Saturday, the 8th of March, for the second 2000 AD deep dive, coming to you from the 2000 AD Thrillcast. Well, thank you, Steve, so much for that fantastic episode. Looking forward to next month. The creator interviews, otherwise known as the creator tapes, are coming back to the 2000 AD Thrillcast in 2 weeks' time, when I shall be interviewing Simon Bisley. about his incredible career and hopefully get a word in edgeways. But don't laugh at it. That's not
we will
fair.
see.
So yeah, that's out on the 22nd of February. So yeah, the deep dives, second Saturday in the month, the creator tapes, fourth Saturday in the month, and then of course me and Chloe just waffling away every Wednesday on In Orbit every Wednesday. So please do like and subscribe on your chosen platform, Earthlets, and thank you for joining us, and thank you to you, Steve, for a fantastic episode, and looking forward to next month.
Pleasure to do it. I'm really happy to be back on the 2000 Thrillcast.
Great. Wonderful. Well, stay tuned, Earthlets, for more from the Galaxy's Greatest Podcast. And until then, from Steve and from me, Splundig Verthrig.